Oh, that sounded important.
That was.
I'll be right back. I needed for my kids to go to bed.
That was just me. Notification coming.
I'm assuming Karsten will become audible in just any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Once we've gotten proof of life out of Karsten, we can probably begin.
Yep. Oh, he has turned green.
Shall I just start anyway? And I'll assume that Karsten is currently working on his audio permissions and.
Yes. Why don't we?
Such?
Yeah. Why don't you take it away? Take it away, James.
Okay, I'll do the usual. Good morning, Karsten.
Good morning.
Just in the nick of time. Cool. I'll do the usual boilerplate that has to be done. Morning, folks. This is for the recording the JSONPath Working Group interim meeting for October 2022. As this is an IETF meeting, the usual rules of the IETF with regards to participation and the likes apply here, so please note well. The usual administrator note takers is usually me after the fact. Blue sheets are automatic. I'll keep an eye out on chat. There's only a handful of us, so it shouldn't be a problem. With regards to agenda bashing, Glenn, you sent out an email yesterday. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the discussion for today?
Oh, somehow I missed that email in the flurry.
Me too.
It wasn't really a input to the agenda so much as just input to the meeting. In terms of draft 07 and.
Oh, right.
But I didn't have agenda items really.
Okay, well, let me propose an agenda then. I propose that for our agenda today, we take up the IREGEX draft first. I think we can dispose of that fairly quickly, and then we will attempt to ascertain what issues are really outstanding on the main draft, and work our way through those. Does that sound reasonable?
Okay.
Okay, so we'll start with IREGEX. Karsten, so 02 has been posted, if I'm correct, that's correct, right?
Yes, so Tim made the changes that became obvious from the Shepard review. So this should now be covered, and I think we are ready for working with Last Call.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who disagrees, thinks we should, I think we're ready for working group last call as well. Does anybody disagree?
I think in our discussions, Tim and Carsten, there was something mentioned of an O3 that needed to go out. Does that need to quickly be kicked out before, or are you expecting to publish a new version anyway as a result of the next phases of document progress?
Yeah, my expectation is that we will get some feedback during working group last call, in particular because we will shop this document in other working groups as well, and there may be some people who see it for the first time. So I think it's pretty normal for a working group last call to result in an updated document, and that would be the -03.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Can't hear you, Greg.
All right. Yep. In that regard, I have opened a new issue on the JSON schema spec. Currently, JSON schema uses ECMA 262 for regular expressions, and it's been kind of a point of contention with people in various languages that don't support ECMA 262 fully. And so I'm proposing that we migrate to this eventually, stating that it is a work in progress, just as kind of a proposal for possible future updates. But that's just one arena where I think this could be quite useful outside of JSONPath as well. Carson, I tagged you in that issue as well.
Great, thank you.
Okay, very good. So in that case, we will take that as consensus and move ahead and launch the WGLC. I guess, James, we should ask you to do that since you're the shepherd.
Yeah. Yeah, I can initiate that after this call.
Okay, excellent. All right, so with respect to the main draft, I'm looking at, I clicked this morning on the editor's link or editor's draft button, and that got me something that advertises itself as being published on 16th October. Is that in fact what you consider to be the latest draft there, Glenn or Karsten?
Yeah, it should be 07 on the document name.
Oddly, I don't see any version number at all on this in the HTML version.
Wait, it says at the top, Internet Draft, second line down, right at the top in small print.
It just says JSONPath-based latest.
Yeah, so when you look into the repository doesn't reflect the revisions of the internet draft. This always has the latest version, and it starts with the main branch, and you actually can select other branches to look at. And if you go into the main page of the repository, the README has a link that compares what is in the repository with what has been the latest submission. I think that's the third entry in the list of links.
Okay, yeah. I posted a link to 07 in the chat.
Beat me by 2 seconds.
Yes, and if you use that link, which I am now pasting, you will see that there is a little bit of gratuitous difference between latest and 07, which has to do with the fact that Martin Thompson's template uses different settings for formatting than the Internet Draft repository. So sometimes there's RFC editor and sometimes there's data tracker, and yeah, there's some work to be done. But apart from that, the versions are identical. But that will, of course, change as soon as we push something to main.
Sure. Okay, so 07 is the one to look at. Okay, so I think for us to work now, we need to have an agreement on what the issues are. So looking at the issues list, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that are open. Glenn and Karsten, do you believe the issues list is a representative snapshot of where we actually stand?
That is a great question. I didn't really have time to check it again.
I think I was probably really
Is it
asking
worth
Glenn.
us then just going through the issues, given that there's less than a dozen of them?
There are 10 open issues that I can see.
Yeah, I think the thickest issue that we still have to work on is 203. And that, of course, also covers 154 and 194. And yeah, they're all labeled extension.
Right. Pardon me, I was ignoring the extension tag.
Yeah.
So, Karsten, you were working on the notion of an extension point. Has anything
Yes.
happened on that?
Not yet. I was waiting for the merge, which has happened yesterday. So this is the next thing to do.
Okay, so does that mean that we're really not in a position to discuss anything with extension on it?
Well, it's easier to discuss it when you have the full proposal.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
So maybe our goal for this meeting should be to clean up everything that is not marked extension?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. Glenn, do you have an opinion about what the best order to take these up in is?
Well, there are two which are currently addressed by an in-flight PR. So number 260 and number 252 are addressed by an in-flight PR. So I don't think we really need to discuss them unless someone wants to.
Right. I believed we had agreed achievement in principle on 260, on what we wanted that to say. And what was the other one? 252.
252.
Yeah.
I can't remember that one at all.
That's that we weren't including the input value in the list of items to traverse in the descendant selector. So essentially it means we end up missing out the children of the top level item. Because we were enumerating just the descendants of the top level item and then looking at their children. That makes sense.
Okay. Well, frankly, in the last couple of weeks before this meeting, I think we've all been concerned with getting that big pile of PRs sorted and merged, which we have. So big thank you to Greg and Glenn and Karsten for arranging for that to happen. Past that, it's not obvious what the best use of our time here is.
Well, could we go through the issues? I think some we might be able to close.
Excellent. Could I ask you to suggest an order there, Glenn?
Yeah, let's start with 227 because I think that is probably not something we want to go near. JSON path branding proposal.
Right. I'm going to. My instinct is to simply say, okay, we'll get to that at some point.
Is that the sort of thing we would do before IESG submission?
It's not a requirement for IESG submission. I mean,
Well, we certainly can edit during working class call. So I don't think it's a blocker for going for working class call. But on the other hand, I think it would be nice to have a little bit of FaceTime to see where we are with this.
I mean, is it worth spending a few minutes talking about that one now?
So if you open that issue, I see a total of 5 proposals in there.
But if you look at them in order, they kind of show an iterative story, I think.
Yeah, I think the main discussion point is whether the the logo should be keyboardable. If yes, that limits the number of proposals we actually have to approximately 2. And if we think the keyboardability is not so important, then of course we have a much more open field.
I have been involved in the production of a substantial number of RFCs, and this is the first time this has even come up. So maybe it's just because I'm a little bit behind the times. Is there a set of traditions or well-established best practices for what logos should look like?
We do often say how people are supposed to pronounce something. So this, to me, this would be a bit of an logical extension to that.
I guess my question is, where would this appear in the RFC, if anywhere?
It
would be in a
wouldn't.
I think this is external to the RFC.
So why is it a
I think
matter
this
for?
this is more community based.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where would it appear?
And probably in just the repo README, I guess. I don't know. Are there other IETF specs that have logos? JSON Schema has a logo, but it's no longer IETF. How do those other IETF specs
So
do?
the short answer is, so to give you another example, the quick working group, in fact I can show you, have so this is their logo. The only place that they use it is on this website, in their GitHub repos, in the README, and they've even gone to the extent of creating merch, stickers, and such with them on. None of this, my understanding, is IETF sanctioned. This is more of a chairs and regular participants in this working group do stuff with the logo because it's an ongoing thing. I think one thing to consider is that well, extensions may prove otherwise, that we probably won't keep the JSON Path Working Group is more of a one-shot where we intend to create these documents and revisit whether or not we want to keep it going. So really the only place that we would use such a logo is, would be for implementations to use it, but then there's a question mark over, well then how does that work with respects to intellectual property of the logo?
Right. So a tangential question is, where is that website managed in relation to the IETF?
So that website is managed by the working group, and I'm not quite sure how it's hosted. If I remember off the top of my head, this is something that the chairs of the working group do.
Okay.
So it's not something that the IETF manages, it's individuals within that working group who just so happen to be chairs.
Yeah, we often have landing pages for
considered external.
We often have landing pages for working groups and research groups, and these are usually managed by the chairs. I mean, they are not going to do something that's preposterous from the point of view of the working group, but they also are not tightly controlled by the working group either.
Yeah.
Right. So I would consider this to be the same thing. It's not a standards issue; it's a community issue. And that gets back to my original argument for keeping the Slack server, but that's a different discussion. But I think having a logo is a good step toward trying to build a community around JSON Path. The JSON Schema community is absolutely fantastic. We have a bunch of people asking questions in multiple places, and like Stack Overflow on GitHub, in Slack, and it's really nice to be able to interact with people who are using JSON Schema in different ways, so that we know how to continue developing the spec. Just building that community around JSONPath would give us those same things.
So much to my surprise, I discovered that JSONPath.org, JSONPath.dev, and so on are all available. So we could have a website if we wanted. Having said that, I haven't seen, none of these proposals make my heart beat faster, to be honest. You know, they're not. But, you know, I'm going to run with one.
Yeah. Personally, I like the dots. It can be keyboarded. The double dot is a thing in the syntax. The curly braces denote JSON. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's good actually.
My instinct is to defer this issue. We'll have lots of time to think about it while the IETF processes grind along, and we can do better than any of these things, I would think.
So could we lob it into the revisit after base done category and close it for now?
I think that would be a good course of action at this point. I want to, you know, I don't want to be grumpy here, but I would like us to focus on getting the spec done.
Shall we add that to the pile?
Yep. I don't have a problem with it.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, done that.
Okay, what's next? Glenn, what should we talk about next?
We could just touch on 265 briefly, just to make sure we've got consensus there. I can't remember who participated. No, I think Carson and Greg agree with me on this, so we're probably okay, but just raise it. It's just that the spec differs from the implementation consensus on this particular one for good reason, and I think we need to go with it. Carson's pointed out that we could mention something in the spec about interoperability for clients, but I'm not. I don't think that's essential, but we can consider it as an editorial change later. If everybody's happy with that, we can just leave it open.
Why shouldn't we settle it now if we have consensus? I mean,
well, it's just the only remaining action. You see, the spec is currently correct as far as this issue is concerned. There's nothing to do, but we could mention that applications that rely on the exact sequence of results will be less interoperable than ones that don't. And it's just a reminder to pop that sentence into the draft.
yeah, that seems like a valuable thing to do.
Yeah, so let's do that soon and then close the issue if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Any objection? Go ahead, Karsten.
Yeah, I just wanted to say this is the right way to do it.
Okay, I'll assign myself. Then at least we'll have issues with someone assigned. We know that something's going to happen. 260 and 252 are assigned to me, and they are in flight. So unless someone wants to discuss either of those now, I suggest just leave them for PR review and merge. Greg's already.
My recollection was that on number 260, we talked about that at some length in our last interim, and I thought we had sort of converged. So I would be inclined to let that go to PR. And you're saying the same is true of 252?
We haven't discussed that then. Certainly Greg has approved the PR that includes that change. I think well, I'd like Carson to see the PR before I merge it, but we're nearly there.
Okay, so are we getting to a point where we are pretty well done aside from the single outstanding issue of an extension point?
Well, hold on, there's 195. I think we can tidy up here and there.
Okay, yes.
I think we're coming to the conclusion that we didn't want to go into non-singular paths inside the filter expressions. It's a bit hard to discern the consensus because it's quite old now. We were kind of leaving it open so that we could, just check that we were okay with not addressing that. I think Carsten was the only one that was kind of slightly in favour of a existence test for non-singular paths.
I don't know. I was happy with it.
Yeah. Carsten, are you happy with this one?
Yeah. I was happy with using a non-singular path as an existence test.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So essentially, what we are doing here is we are restricting the syntax of the paths that can appear in existence tests to those of singular paths, and I think that is an unnecessary restriction. On the other hand, that's also something that is easily retrofit. We don't break anything existing when we actually allow non-singular paths here as well. So it's not something that really must be fixed from my point of view.
Okay. I think the only counter argument I remember against doing this is that it means that inside a filter expression, some places where paths are permissible can only be singular, and other ones can be non-singular. So there's a slight kind of memory issue for users there. They have to remember which one's which, but obviously
Consistency.
Yeah.
What is that, Glenn? I'm trying to visualize that and coming up empty. What's an example?
Well, if you have a path and you compare it to a literal, for example, so a path that's meant to identify a string and you compare it to a string literal, that's got to be a singular path. Whereas if you have, with this issue, if you have a path in an exists expression, that doesn't have to be a singular path.
Right. I see.
So the users have to remember which is which, what the rules are.
Would it be reasonable? Is that difference called out explicitly in the spec language?
It will be.
Okay,
Yeah,
so okay,
it would
fair
be
enough.
if we do this.
Yeah. But
currently only singular paths are available for either.
Yeah, it would require users to be aware of it, you see. They probably won't read the spec.
Well, fair enough, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't say so. I have no opinion at all as to which way to go, but I think that if there is such a difference, we should call it out explicitly, so people won't, think we're fooling them or something like that. So the actual spec language should explicitly point out that it has to be singular in this place and not necessarily in the other.
Okay, why don't we proceed as follows? I'll put up a PR with this change in and with the warning that there is a difference, and then we'll see how the PR goes down.
Okay.
So just as a reminder, that means we cannot ask questions like, is there any foo in there that has a bar in it? Because we don't have a descendant selector available, a descendant segment available, new terminology.
We can't ask that now, but if we do this, then we would be able to ask that.
Where this is allowing non-singular paths.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do we have any consensus information about this?
That's a good one.
Looks like nobody has actually looked this up.
Well, it's not easy to look up because it requires that the implementation has something like an existence check in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And So I'm not sure you just add one item to Gustav's list and get it that way.
Yeah,
Probably
for
need
what
a
it's
little
worth, I
bit more than
believe
that.
my implementation would support this. Mine is one of about 20, 30 implementations at this point.
I'm just quickly scanning the 91 filter items in the comparison project.
It'd be cool if the comparison project had to enter your filter and it would just run them all. Doling up work for other people. I like that idea.
I'm looking through the comparison and it's as clear as mud. I mean, clearly there are some that, @sign.id equals 2.
Yeah, so they're
But
irrelevant
there are
to
some
this.
that support this. I mean, it's a thing that's clearly useful. It's not hard at all to think of a use case. And yet it is clear that there are some that apparently don't.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not covered. Okay, I'll take an action to add something to the comparison project to test that.
Glenn, are you a contributor on there? Do you have the ability to merge PRs, or are we still reliant on the owner to do
I
those?
can merge PRs, but I don't have the setup to do a full test locally. So I kind of depend upon Christoph to finish things off for me. But he's pretty responsive when I put things up, so it should be okay.
Okay.
So I think our takeaway is that our consensus is that we like this. There's nobody who's really against having a non-singular expression here, assuming that it's not an egregious stepping away from what's currently supported in the field.
Yeah,
sounds right.
Yeah. Okay, going back to the list of issues, may I suggest that 203 is assigned to Carsten because it's got, in fact, all the extension ones are assigned to Carsten. It's got the 160
Please
as well.
reload. Please reload.
Yeah, well done. Got you.
Like
Great.
magic.
About 160.
Yeah, that's essentially covered by it should be merged into 203.
Yeah, it seems redundant.
Yeah, but maybe if you could assign it, then we've got a track of which issues we're actually going to work on.
Yeah.
So I think that will just leave the branding proposal and the administrative issue 151, which we definitely don't need to address until the base is done.
Right.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think we're done with that list of issues.
Excellent. So in that case, I guess we should talk about scheduling.
Yep. Noting that IETF 115 is in about 3 weeks' time, and we can't book either side of it by a week or two, if I'm not mistaken. Is it worth us doing a meeting at the end of November? I'm hesitant to go into December because I know that, you know, in the lead up to Christmas, end of the year, etc., people are generally less available.
So November, we could look at trying to meet the week of November 21st, Monday 21st.
Okay.
Do we have Americans here?
Tim.
Oh, that's right. That's probably Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Greg, you're a sort of an American, but you're not there, right?
No, I'm in New Zealand. I escaped.
So I think that week is available to us.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
It'll be quiet.
I'll
that
do
week.
a doodle poll after this.
Oh, are we trying to get draft out before the 115 deadline next week?
I don't. That would be lovely, but it seems ambitious at this point.
Yeah, that would be right. We'd have to do it by the end of the week.
Okay, if that is not the case, then we can get the draft out again at the start of IETF week. So on November 6th.
That seems ambitious for the extension point stuff.
Yeah.
I expect there to be some discussion about the extension point proposal. I mean, unless I've misjudged it, I would have thought we needed to get the proposal out and have an interim meeting to discuss it, and then finish it off. So we're talking about a few months.
Well, I would hope, you know, I mean, I think we all know more or less what we're going to get from Karsten here. So, you know, we could maybe just finish it up with email and GitHub issues and have something pretty well finished by November 20th or whenever it was that we said. And
okay, if the devil is not in the detail, and if we have a following wind, we may manage that. So let's see.
Yeah, the devil is in the ABNF, but yes.
Do we have a, I guess, a verbal consensus that the function syntax is the direction we want to go with this?
That's what I took away from the discussion so far.
Okay.
And are we limiting this to filter expressions, or is it more general?
Well, the filter expression is the only place where we could use a function expression.
No, not really.
That's debatable.
Yeah.
So where would you like to see it as well?
I've seen other implementations like tack on a max at the end or something like that. But I don't know that we need to do that. I think having them in filter expressions is a good starting point.
yeah, my instinct is that hits an 80-20 point of where people would actually want to do extensions.
But it would be
good.
conceivable to have a function segment.
Conceivable, but practical.
Well,
The idea
certainly
doesn't
for
sound
.text.
insane. So, Karsten, how's your availability? Do you anticipate being able to give us something soon, or what?
I anticipate that there is an internet draft deadline on next Monday, which I have a few other drafts to complete, and I should be able to submit something during the week after that. I mean, during the week that starts with the internet draft deadline.
Okay. I guess I should just say for the record that you know, our horizon on this work is not infinite.
Yes.
At some point, speaking under my co-chair hat, I'm going to suggest that our patients, you know, that if we don't do work on this, that means we don't care enough about it. So, anyhow, I think I'm clear.
Yeah. Carsten, will you have enough cycles in the next week or two to review pull requests?
Yes.
Great. And Greg, is that same for you?
Yep, it's basically my job now. So
Yeah. Great.
That's what,
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be
Good.
getting a PR from me with a bunch of minor editorial points.
Great.
okay.
Yeah, I think all of us will stumble about these kinds of things. So, I didn't do a full reread of the document after the merge yet, so that's actually something that needs to be done.
Likewise. In fact, yeah, let me just emphasize that point. You know, that was a pretty big merge, and I would encourage everybody to, you know, read the thing end to end, and make sure nothing crept in.
Yeah.
Did we
Okay,
get all the?
folks.
I think we're done with our meeting.
Sorry, Greg's
did we
trying to
get
say
all the
something?
build stuff worked out? All the make warnings and everything?
Yeah, that was just had to remove one ID that wasn't needed. It went away.
Okay.
I think there was a collision between a coded ID and a generated ID. Removing the coded ID, which wasn't used, removed the collision. There's a kind of tooling issue there, but I don't want to go near that for the moment.
I think I remembered that. If we were, I think we should check to make sure that all the links lead to where we want them to lead.
I would hope we'd get warnings for broken links, but you never know.
Right, but if we had a coded link match up with a generated link somewhere else.
Oh yeah.
And so if we were linking to the coded link,
yeah,
and we removed it, now it's going to go to the generated link. So we need to make sure that all of our internal links work properly where they should
so,
go.
References to the coded link. Couldn't see any.
Okay.
Okay, folks, are we done for this evening?
I think we're done.
I think so. Yeah, brilliant.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I'm sensing the finish line, and I think it is not crazy at all to think that we will be substantially done with our initial cut of this draft by the end of the year.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, Tim, would you mind sticking on for a second? I've got a couple questions for you.
Sure.
It's pretty recorded. You probably don't want to do this.
You probably want to do this offline.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's just general questions about IETF meetings and such.
They'll still end up on YouTube.
Yeah, all
Go
right.
ahead,
All right. So I was just curious of how the IETF meetings work. You mentioned the IETF 115 or something like that coming up. I didn't know how that worked. Are they open? Are they IETF only? What what kind of thing?
There is no membership to the IETF, so there's 3 meetings a year. And now that we're having physical meetings, there's usually 1 in Europe, 1 in Asia, 1 in North America. You can either attend as a remote participant, which comes with a lower cost to it, and the cost increases depending on how early or late you pay for your attendance. It starts at about 230 US, I think, and the physical attendance costs a bit more. We don't generally have meetings for JSONPath because we found very early on that they're having much lower attendance and participation because of that barrier to entry. So we just run this working group as a sort of an interim only thing, which is generally not an issue.
Okay. Okay. Is that stuff available online to look up, like the scheduling?
Yes.
locations and
Yes,
stuff?
actually, and you can just start at IETF.org. There's some efforts at the moment to write some documentation to help people talk to their bosses about the benefits of attending the IETF and an explanation of the costs and all the rest of it. I could probably send you that if it's in a usable state.
Okay.
But you work for Microsoft, don't you?
I work for Postman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was about to say, because if you were still at Microsoft, I thought you were at one point. They have there's many attendees, and it might have been easier to hook you up with a colleague that would have known the processes internally. But yeah.
I imagine Postman's probably familiar with it as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and Dennis Miller is actually member of or very active in IETF and also active in JSON Schema, so I can tag him up if necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah, it may be the case that when we go to IETF last call, that if a really substantial discussion breaks out, we may decide that we owe the community and a presence at some future IETF. So that could happen.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Thanks, Chance.